Hi everyone, I'm Kaushiki from Simply Amazing Life by Kaushiki, and today I am sharing my most favorite chocolate cake recipe with you, also popularly known as the chocolate truffle cake. Now in this I'll be sharing my chocolate cake recipe, which is going to be eggless, and you can replace the flour with a whole wheat flour or with an all purpose flour, but as you know, I like to cook my cakes with a multigrain flour. Also in this I'll be sharing my mouth melting recipe of chocolate ganache. Yes, and I have made a chocolate cake n number of times. If you follow me on Facebook and Instagram, you know that chocolate cake is one of my go-to cakes when I'm baking for someone, because first it is very stable. So if you stay in a warm country like India, where the temperature goes really high during the summers, this is one of the very stable cakes. So it can stand on the cake stand for hours without melting on you. So I really like to make chocolate cakes at least for the summertime. Now we can do n number of variation in this particular chocolate cake, but we'll go into the details a little later. So the decoration part of this chocolate cake will be a separate video. Why? Because in the last video, if you have seen, I have made a vanilla uh, buttercream cake, and if you have not seen those videos are worth watching, where I've shared my eggless vanilla cake recipe and eggless buttercream recipe without using icing sugar, and it's really tasty cake. So do check that video after watching this video. But in that video decoration, that cake decoration entirely, I have used couple of tools, like I have used a spatula, I have used a scraper, but in this chocolate cake decoration video, I'll not be using a spatula, I'll not be using a scraper, and still we'll make a Pinterest worthy cakes. So if that excites you, then let's continue with the video and let's get started. So let's start with the chocolate cake here, and I have left some hot water boiling in the pot, and on top I am putting another pot. This creates a double boiler. Now to this I'm adding dark chocolate, and I'm using a Cavercha chocolate. You can use whichever chocolate you like, but just the reminder that the taste of the chocolate cake comes from the chocolate and the cocoa powder that we use in the cake. So try and use the best quality possible. To this I have added 1/4 cup of oil. I'm using any flavorless oil. So in my case I have used a light olive oil. You can use canola oil or sunflower oil or a refined oil. Do not add any oil that has very strong pungent flavor like mustard oil, sesame oil or coconut oil. They will totally ruin your cake. Make sure all the lumps of the chocolates are melted. Add a cup of milk. Till this step, you should not heat the chocolate on direct flame. This will not only just prevent the chocolate from being burnt, it will also stop the sugar caramelization in the chocolate. Now add a cup of water. All the ingredients used here are on room temperature. Do not boil the mixture, keep it on a low simmer. To this, I'll add 1/4 cup of cocoa powder. I'm using a Dutch process. You can use whatever is conveniently available to you. add 1 teaspoon of instant coffee. That's totally optional. If you're not a coffee lover, you can happily omit this ingredient. I'm switching to the wire whisk because the lumps of the cocoa powder has to dissolve in this mixture, and it will taste really bitter if it is not dissolved properly and it stays like that. To this I'm adding a 3/4 cup of sugar. Now, temperature of the mixture has down. Your before you start. So over here I've taken 250 grams of flour. I'm using multigrain flour, and to that I'm adding 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Now I'll add this dry mixture in batches. I am adding it in a batch of 4. Add a splash of vanilla and whisk this mixture. You can also use a wire whisk or a wooden spatula or an electrical hand blender for this cake, whatever is convenient. This is a very forgiving cake recipe. Now add the third batch of flour. We still have 1 batch of flour left to add. But before that, I'm adding 1 teaspoon of baking soda and 1 tablespoon of white vinegar. Now you can see the instant froth in the cake. But I do not want this bubbly cake. If you like such a high spongy cake, you can go ahead. I want a little moist and a little dense cake. Not too dense, but yes, not so much of sponge as well. So I have left 1 batch of flour to be added at the end of this process. If you like extremely spongy cake, then you add all the flour mixture before adding the vinegar and baking soda. Now take 7-inch cake tin. I'm taking 2, and oil it or grease it with butter if you have. Then take the parchment paper, crush it and line the bottom of the cake tin. Do not skip the lining of the cake tin because this is a very moist and a sticky cake, and it will stick at the bottom of the pan. So lining of the cake tin with the parchment paper is a mandatory step. Now mix the batter well. It's still very frothy and very fluffy. Now distribute the batter equally in both the cake tins and bake this at 170 degrees C for 25 to 30 minutes on a convection mode. You can also bake this cake in a steamer, so they come really perfect even in the steamer. You don't need to have an oven to bake this cake. Now once the cake is nice and baked, you will insert a toothpick and check whether it is baked from the center. This I have already shown you in my vanilla cake recipe, that always test the cake with a toothpick in the center. If the crumbs are sticking or it's still wet from the center, then that means you have to put the cake again in the oven. And if you think the top has already baked and it will burn if we bake it further, then cover the top with another cake tin or a parchment paper or a aluminium foil paper. Now you see how spongy this cake is, and The cake is still very hot, but the cake has come out absolutely perfect. So let's start with chocolate ganache again on the double boiler. I am heating 150 grams of cream. This is a heavy cream and I'm using Amul brand for this. To this I'll add 1 tablespoon of butter. I'm using a salted butter. You can go for unsalted. If you're using unsalted, add a pinch of salt. Now again, this is optional. I am a true coffee lover, so I like coffee flavor in my chocolate ganache. So I'm adding 1 teaspoon of instant coffee. If you are not, then please omit, or if you're using it for your kids, then you can definitely omit this coffee portion. Now whisk it thoroughly, melt all the butter, and then add the chopped chocolate. I'm using 300 grams of Couverture dark chocolate. You can use semi-sweet chocolate, or you can use milk chocolate if you like a little sweeter flavor. I am not a fan of either extremely bitter chocolate or extremely sweet chocolate. Now I have put on the lid and taken it off the heat, but I'll place it on top of the same hot pot of water and it will melt the chocolate eventually. Now one thing that you do not want to do with the ganache is stir the ganache vigorously. You want it to melt down gently on its own. You do not want to stir the chocolate vigorously, because the cocoa butter in the chocolate will separate, and you have seen that happening many a times. So do not stir the chocolate at all. And this is how the chocolate cake came out. I hope you enjoyed this cake video, and if you did, then please show us some love and give us a thumbs up, and like and share this video with your friends and family, and do subscribe to this channel around, because next video is going to be about the cake decoration of this chocolate cake using the chocolate ganache that you have just seen. See you next time. Bye bye.